Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abby, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abby, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abby podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Dear Abby. I am your humble host. My name is Abby, and this is my podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for joining in. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day wherever you're at. If you're in the car driving to work, if you're driving home, if you're listening at night before you go to bed, if you're listening while you're doing laundry. So whatever time it is, whatever you're doing, I hope you're having a good day. I haven't seen you in a week. A lot can change. A lot happens in a week. First off, just want to say thank you guys for listening to this episode. And if you've been around for a while, for listening to many of my episodes. If you are newer, hello, welcome. And I also have a lot of other episodes if you want to listen. There's 100 something now, so you can check it out. The topic, so what we're talking about today is something that is very near and dear to my little heart, and that is highly sensitive people, highly sensitive person, HSP. There's a lot of information about highly sensitive people and what that means, what that feels like, what that experience is like. There's a lot of people on this planet who are HSPs, and not just all about HSPs, but specifically I wanted to talk about the top 3 like misunderstandings or the top 3 stigmas, I guess, that would coincide or that people get labeled as when they're an HSP by people who might also be an HSP, but just maybe are struggling or something, or just people that don't understand highly sensitive people. Even the topic of highly sensitive people, I think, can make other people angry. I've learned it throughout my life, and I think that's what I wanted to talk about because I wanted to, I think, maybe validate people's experiences if they've been maybe if they kind of identify as an HSP or if they feel connected to that and that resonates with them. I think I just wanted to validate some of the experiences of being really misunderstood. And if you're not familiar with what an HSP is, a super brief description is, I believe they would be classified as neurodivergent individuals who are just highly sensitive. Their nervous system is sensitive to emotions, to physical sensations, mental sensations sometimes. They have a really sensitive nervous system. So noises, it can be a range of things. But yeah, I think it's like a scale kind of. I am not an expert on it. I've only read a book or two on it. I've listened to podcasts that talk about highly sensitive people. Every single therapist I would ever go to would ask me if I've ever been told that could be something that I am. And it always made sense. So you can take a little test if you're curious. It's not a disorder. It's not something that's bad or broken. It's like an inherited trait. And it is something that can be kind of hard sometimes, but I really believe it is like my favorite part of being who I am. And a lot of people are HSPs in this planet, and it's a very wonderful thing to be. So I want to talk about kind of the top 3 stigmas with that to kind of squash them in the small way that I have, the small voice that I have. And also maybe just give a little bit of a background of what an HSP is and some random facts, because there's a lot that people might not know. And I think also when you don't understand something, then you're going to have incorrect assumptions or stereotypes around something that you don't understand, because your brain is going to fill it in. And so it's going to fill in with things that you've seen online, random things, maybe bad experiences with somebody that you thought was sensitive, and, a bunch of things. So again, I am speaking as somebody that is not an expert on the subject at all. There are so many experts and I am not one of them. I just like this topic. It really resonates with me, and I feel very understood by a lot of the work that Elain Aron has done. I don't know if that's how you say her name, but to get right into the history of it, there was a psychologist named Dr. Elain Aron, Aron, I believe is her last name, in the 1990s. And she did a lot of research. I just read her book, The Highly Sensitive Person. So I'll link that definitely in the description if you're curious about it. But I also forgot a lot of stuff, so I'll have to read it again. It's just there's a lot of information about it. And there's a lot of different chapters of different aspects of somebody who is highly sensitive. And it's not a one size fits all. I wouldn't say it's a scale. I think it's just sometimes you're more sensitive to some things and it comes out in a certain way. And then sometimes it comes out in a different way. And it just is, everybody is different with it, even if you have it. Dr. Elain did a lot of research with the people she worked with, and she kind of coined the term highly sensitive person, and she wrote a book, probably multiple. She is the expert on the subject. And from what I remember in the book, she's also one herself, so she understands firsthand. But yeah, her book is amazing. I felt really understood by it. And so if you're interested, yeah, check it out. But yeah, in HSP, there's like a biological trait, which I believe is SPS, sensory processing sensitivity, something like that. Well, I guess I could just look it up actually. So, okay, it is sensory processing sensitivity, SPS. Let me read some of the facts because I am not good at remembering these on top of my head. Okay, here are some of the other facts that I have. HSPs process sensory input, emotions, and social cues more deeply than the average person. Core traits of HSPs: depth of processing, overstimulation, emotional reactivity and empathy, and sensitivity to subtleties. How rare is it? This is mostly what I wanted to share, is 15 to 20% of the population are estimated to be HSPs. So obviously we can't know for sure how many people are or are not because we can't interview the entire population. So that's just an estimated amount. So that's a lot of people. As I said before, it's not a disorder. It is a normal inherited trait. And it's also found equally in men and women, though it may be less recognized in men due to cultural expectations. There's a quick squashing of a stigma or just a misunderstanding about HSPs, because I think most people assume that HSPs are introverts, but a lot of them, say 30% of HSPs are actually extroverts. So again, it doesn't all look the same. So that's all I'm going to explain about HSPs. I'll probably explain more as I touch on each of the typical stereotypes or stigmas, misunderstandings that go along with being an HSP. So I'll probably share more about what it is while I go through those. But if you want to learn more, there's, again, a lot of different things you can read or research. And it's just, you can look up Elain Aron and all of her work. Okay, I think one of the top misconceptions or maybe misunderstandings when people are highly sensitive is other people might perceive them, especially when you're a kid. Other kids might perceive that child as attention seeking, or even as an adult, especially if somebody is uncomfortable with their own emotions, they might see someone else who is crying or who is having a hard time processing external noise or something. They feel overwhelmed, they feel overstimulated. They might see that as you want all the attention. And I think it's ironic because as some people might perceive showing emotion, showing what's actually going on inside of you as attention seeking, I understand an aspect to where they're coming from. And I've talked about this before, but if someone is highly emotional and they don't know how to process that in a controlled manner, as in they get mad, they lash out, they're mean, and they don't have control over themselves, then sometimes that's what people associate with sensitive people or people who show emotion, because that might be the first thing that their brain or that they think of is, okay, well, you're emotional, so that means you lash out on people, you can't control yourself. I think that is a huge misconception, especially for people who are highly sensitive. And of course, somebody who's sensitive can also want attention. It's not like it can't be both, but that being a blanket statement and a generalization over people who have a sensitivity to their emotions and might cry more, might be overwhelmed more, and that might show. I promise you, those people do not want all the attention. In fact, they probably want to go home alone in a dark room and recharge and cry and feel everything that they want to feel in a safe, controlled environment where they're probably not with people. So a lot of the times when you are very sensitive, big emotions and big feelings and being overwhelmed, overstimulated can come kind of out of nowhere, or can just be triggered by a small thing, like a really loud airplane goes over your head and it kind of comes out of nowhere and it throws off your nervous system a little bit. And then from there, sometimes very heightened and big emotions or feelings can come up with that. And so you might just start crying out of nowhere. And so they might just start crying out of nowhere, or they might feel like they're having a panic. They might feel panicked a little bit, or have anxiety. But that doesn't always look like cowering and running away or being too weak or something. That's the experience that they're having. We're still capable adults, and we can feel all of our feelings and also be in control of how we react to that, how we respond. And sometimes how we choose is just to give out a little bit of a cry, or just to excuse ourselves and go somewhere where we feel safe and process everything we're feeling. Or sometimes it can just be if it's like a lot and you need to run it off, or you need to, I don't know, do a HIIT workout or do something more active with your body. That also can be how people react to it. But it's not like we feel these big feelings and then all of a sudden we're like cowering and we're weak, which is the second stigma that I wanted to talk about, was that sensitivity equals fragility or weakness. But I'm going to stay on the first one and go back and touch on something else really quick in regards to people thinking that when you are sensitive or you show emotion that you are an attention seeker. So not only do most of the people that have big reactions, when they have these big feelings, they don't really want to be noticed. They kind of just want to go be alone to process, so that way they feel like they're back to homeostasis. But sometimes when you are highly sensitive, and again, this is like not a one size fits all, but some people who are highly sensitive really value can really value being vulnerable and connecting through emotions, or just by being very vulnerable and honest. And a lot of the time, highly sensitive people are pretty quiet people for the most part. It doesn't always have to be this way. And especially like in a group setting or a new environment, usually there's a lot of observing. It's a lot of like regulating and seeing new things, feeling new feelings, smelling new things. So again, a lot of HSPs are very quiet people. And one of my favorite chapters in The Highly Sensitive Person is about how sometimes if you're highly sensitive, or sometimes if you're anxious too, it's not a one size fits all, but as a highly sensitive person, sometimes people think that you're shy. And so a lot of times in your life, you've been told that you're super shy, you need to get out more, like you're just really shy. And that kind of sounds like you're scared. And I was told that so much growing up. Like that's one of the main things that I was told I was just shy. And that really had an effect on me growing up, because I always felt shy was being told to me in a negative way, as in I'm scared. Like I should be talking more. That's what I should be doing, because everyone else is talking more. Everyone else feels super comfortable and they want to share. But for me, it's not that I was scared to talk. Most of the time, I just didn't really want to say anything yet. I don't want to just say something to fill the silence. I really value saying things that I care about, and also being present with people. To me, it feels more like listening than talking. That's not better or worse than anyone else. That's just how I show up in the world. That's what I've always just felt is like, if I don't have anything that I want to add to this conversation, I'm just not going to say anything. And I'm totally fine with that. I don't need everybody to hear everything all the time that I have to say. Yeah, that chapter really changed the way that I thought about being told I was shy. And I felt finally understood in a way, because I never really felt like I was shy. I was like, I'm not scared of people. I'm actually pretty confident, but I just sometimes don't want to say anything. Like I want to wait until I have something really valuable to say, and then I'll say it. Until then, I don't feel the need to talk. I don't know. That's just how I've been. That being said, I have had like social anxiety before, and that does feel like I am scared to talk. So there is a total difference. But sometimes some highly sensitive people just don't feel the need to speak until they really have something that they want to say, and that's what they value. Not all sensitive people or emotional people are attention seekers. Sometimes they really value connection through vulnerability with their emotions because that is vulnerable. And honestly, because so many people judge people who show emotion or who show vulnerability, then it kind of proves the point that it is a very strong thing to do because people do judge. And the people who do judge are kind of scary because they're like really kind of mean or very judgmental, I guess, and that never feels good. But I don't want to like classify everybody who makes assumptions as mean or judgy because I don't think that's true either. I think a lot of people can be uncomfortable with raw emotion and they've seen it in some kind of negative light. And so there's a reason why. So I can totally understand that. And at the same time, I can also still be myself and be sensitive and want to connect through vulnerability because that's what I value and that's what I bring to the world. That's the first one, is we're not all attention seekers, and that's not why we are sensitive. The second thing I think is I already touched on a little bit, but that we're weak. Like if you're sensitive, then you are weak, and that those are somehow the same thing. I think this is something that isn't necessarily always from other people that assume we can tell ourselves if you are sensitive that it is a weakness or a bad thing. But that is because I think it's a gift sometimes that is misunderstood. And it is something that we probably have been made fun of before a lot for crying, for being a certain way, for being maybe sensitive to criticism or conflict. A lot of the times we can feel like we want to mediate or observe. That can be very common too. Anyways, I was talking to somebody recently about this, and she was talking about how she felt maybe misunderstood when she feels like she opens up and she's showing her emotions, and then people assume that she is too weak to do something because she has a strong emotional reaction by crying or something like that. And it made me think of how often we probably feel really misunderstood when we are emotional and when you are sensitive and when you open up and when you're crying or when you just need to like process everything. And this doesn't only apply to highly sensitive people too. I think just any vulnerability or sensitivity to something or crying or overwhelmed in any way. Sometimes when we show this emotion, some people might look at that and think of it as us showing that we can't handle it, or that if you are crying, then you probably can't handle it, and it's probably not good that you're crying. That can't be a good thing if you're upset about something, or if you're having a hard time, or if you feel overwhelmed, then maybe you're too weak to do this or something. I think we tell that to ourselves too sometimes when something is hard and we cry and we're having a hard time processing it, or we feel overwhelmed. And so sometimes the next thought after, okay, we feel overwhelmed is I can't do this, or I'm too weak. And I think that is so far from the truth. Even if there is a weakness, there's always something that can be a strength from that, as well as with vulnerability and showing, and with maybe crying out your feelings or with processing it in some way. It doesn't mean that you can't handle whatever is overwhelming to you. For example, I got divorced, right, a while ago. I would cry all the time thinking about getting remarried when I was engaged. It felt so overwhelming to me. I felt scared. I felt really uncertain of how I will be able to handle this because I know I still have some healing to do in some ways. I was feeling overwhelmed with getting married. So I could have thought, okay, I'm crying a lot. I'm very emotional. I'm crying a lot. I probably just shouldn't get married. I probably should just like throw in the towel. I'm not strong enough because I'm showing emotion and I have emotions about something. Or I feel overwhelmed, so I probably should just quit. That, I think, is so far from the truth. I think what emotional intelligence is recognizing that I need to feel this stuff. I need to actually be honest with what I'm feeling. And then after processing, I'm able to pick myself up and I'm able to execute whatever I wanted to do or whatever I was in the middle of doing. And so sometimes, especially when you're highly sensitive, then you have a lot of these times of feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated, and you might cry a lot. You might feel angry a lot almost. We have to find ways to process all of that and deal with those big emotions, those big feelings. But that doesn't mean that you can't handle your life. That doesn't mean you can't handle whatever is in front of you. It just means that that's how you handle it sometimes is I need to cry first. Let me cry for like 20 minutes and then I will get back up here and I will do better than I did before I cried, because that is just how you might process life. And even if this isn't relating to you, it could be someone you love or a spouse or a family member or even a child. If you notice that they might be highly sensitive, this could be something that might help you understand them and also maybe see them in a new light, that their sensitivity, they're crying, they're over, and when they're overwhelmed, it doesn't mean that they're weak, and don't look at them as weak. I like to say that highly sensitive people are not like glass fragile. They're not fragile. It's not like you drop them once and they're like shattered forever, but rather they're like tender. They're like chicken tenders. But you know, like fragile and tender are different to me. Tender is like a teddy bear. Fragile is like glass. And I don't think people are glass. So someone can cry and be emotionally overwhelmed for a little bit and then be just as strong as the person next to them. And that's just how they live. That's just how they are. And there's nothing that needs to be fixed about that. I do feel like that's something that people who might not be sensitive people, when they see people like that and they're like, oh my gosh, that looks exhausting to like feel so like many ups and downs, have all of this overwhelming sensations and feelings. It's like, okay, yeah, I can be a little bit overwhelming, but you don't need to fix me. Like, I don't need to be fixed. I'm very sensitive and I do not need to be fixed, and I don't want to be fixed from that. I feel like that is a huge thing that people who are highly sensitive give to the world. That is like one of their gifts. Not the only one, but that is a huge gift. This isn't one that I had as like a stereotype, but no highly sensitive person or empathetic person or anything like that thinks that they're better than people who wouldn't be classified as highly sensitive or empathetic. There is no superiority in that area that people think about themselves. And also, I think that they do have a capacity that does help people feel listened to and understood and cared for. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. Okay, the last stereotype, I think, is something I always see when people are like, oh, I'm just an empath. Like, that's so made fun of online. And I understand why sometimes, because people do say it in like a, maybe not being super self-aware in how they say it, or I don't know, maybe they do have some superiority with, I'm more empathetic than you type of a thing. When I think if you are truly empathetic, you don't really think about how empathetic you are all the time. I don't know. So I understand that. Along those same lines, I think a lot of people think when you are more highly sensitive and when you get overstimulated, overwhelmed, that you're faking it somehow. That you're faking it maybe for attention, that you're faking it because you're trying to avoid something. You're faking it because you're lazy. You're faking it because you just want to quit. Like, who knows why people think that. When you're sensitive, you're faking it, or when you're overstimulated, overwhelmed, you're faking it. As somebody who has been highly sensitive her whole life, I am definitely not faking it. Let's remind everybody what HSPs are. The same exact airplane flies over my head as it does to the person next to me. The person next to me might not have a super sensitive nervous system. They don't process things the same with their senses. It's not as sensitive. So that same plane might not affect them at all. However, that plane for me, the way that I am processing it in my own nervous system, which your nervous system is very much a part of your body. It's a very physical, real experience. The way that affects me is wildly different than it might affect the person next to me. That's just how it is. And I promise you, they're not faking it. It's almost like if somebody is meant to be an actor, or if they're meant to be a performer, or if they're meant to be an artist or something, it's like you just keep being called to it, and that feels like you. You feel tucked in, your heart feels tucked in, you feel safe and at home when you are doing what you're meant to do. And when people are highly sensitive, that type of a life and the way that they're feeling things, that feels like you're tucked in, if that makes sense. You also kind of have no choice because, again, it's very reactive. It's an immediate reaction physically to somebody. It's real. It's not fake. People aren't faking overstimulation. Are there things to help with feeling overstimulated? Sure. But even then, no matter what I've done in my life, I've never really felt a change in how my body processes certain sensory things, as well as my heightened emotions. That has always been the same. No matter what my lifestyle was, good, bad, clean, not clean, organic, not organic, it's been the same. So it's not something that's just like changed. Okay, you're not highly sensitive anymore. It's again, an inherited trait. It's a very physical thing. And this is what I will end with. Okay. I will end with two things. One, it is okay if you are misunderstood by people. Let me remind everybody that whether you are sensitive, or you're a highly sensitive person or you're not, whatever you are, however you feel internally, some people might always misunderstand you. And as painful as that can be sometimes, especially when they're people who are close to you or that you want to be closer to, there is freedom and peace that comes when we can just accept that we're going to be misunderstood and that what they think I am is not what I am. Just because somebody might think that you're doing something for attention, but you know you are not, just because they're saying it does not make it true. You know yourself and you know what your intentions are. You know, and God knows. It's nice to feel like understood or validated, and we have to work on I have to work on this too. I have a hard time with this, is accepting that people will misunderstand me. Sometimes I'm great at it and I'm like, who cares? I know myself. Sometimes insecurities rise and I care about what people are saying or thinking of me or assuming. So we have to be at peace with ourselves. It's good to feel validated in some of the struggles of being misunderstood. And at the same time, we have to learn to be misunderstood. And that doesn't mean that what they're saying is true. Okay, and then the second thing is you don't have to change your sensitivity, as well as if you know somebody that is sensitive and that might cry a lot, maybe ask them if that makes them feel weak or not, instead of just assuming that because they're crying, because they're vulnerable, they feel weak. Because I don't think a lot of people feel weak when they are being emotional. Because I think most of the time when people are being honest and when they're being vulnerable in some emotional way, they don't always have to feel super weak in every aspect of their life. So when you're highly sensitive, you might cry a lot, you might have these moments a lot. So instead of maybe assuming that because somebody is feeling sensitive or overwhelmed that they are weak, don't put that on them. Assume that they are strong and assume that you don't have to fix somebody who is crying. You don't have to fix somebody who is emotional. I think, again, some people who get frustrated or annoyed with people who are emotional maybe feel like they have to fix that emotion in somebody. And I think that causes extra tension between people. Versus if you find it uncomfortable when somebody is emotional and expressing emotion to you, maybe if you just listen to it and open your heart a little bit and connect with them on some way versus trying to fix it or fix their emotion so it's not as uncomfortable anymore. You don't have to fix people who are highly sensitive. It's not something that they want to be fixed anyways. As well as if you are sensitive, just remind yourself you don't have to fix yourself. There's nothing to be fixed about that. It is a beautiful, wonderful gift. And a lot of people who are highly sensitive are very creative, empathetic. They're good with helping people. That's just like something that they are amazing at. Not that you have to do all of that stuff, but every highly sensitive person I feel like has different callings and within that. So whatever calls to you. Well, I think that's it for that. I hope any of that made sense as normal. Thank you for listening. That's it for today. We don't have a Dear Abby, sadly. I did run out of Dear Abby's. So if you guys have any questions, please reach out. This is the first time I've ever ran out of Dear Abby's since I think the beginning of when I started. Everyone's run out of questions. So I could have, you guys, I totally could have made up questions just to seem like people are just sending them endless questions for me. But people get busy and people forget, and I don't really remind everyone at the beginning of the episode, and nobody listens to the end. I know that. You guys, I can see when people drop off. So please send in Dear Abby's. You can send in text messages or voicemails or calls or DMs. You can send whatever you want, but I need more Dear Abby's. But I will need one for next week's episode. Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of Dear Abby. If you want to support the podcast, you can leave a rating and review on Apple or Spotify, or you can just like, subscribe, comment, whatever on YouTube as well. I post my podcasts there. If you really want to be supportive, you can share on your story that you were listening to this episode or any episode that you like. If you want to hear me talk about something specific, you can always DM me or text the number in the description below, and I would love to talk about it. Okay, love you guys. Have a good weekend. Bye.
우회전 taking a ride to Jonathan 눈치 보면서 들어가야 할 때 찾아 나머진 바빠 개설레임 바꾸는 사람들